Several important changes took place in the late 19th century. First, around 1870, Germany became the new leader in European industry. Germany far exceeded the production of any other European nation in chemicals and electrical equipment. The nation continued to expand its trade networks and soon enjoyed a flood of new plants and factories. Great Britain tried to retake its position as industrial leader, but Germany would not give up its newly acquired title so easily. The United States also enjoyed successes during the Second Industrial Revolution. In fact, industry had made the U.S. the richest nation in the world at this time. The Second Industrial Revolution caused growth in industry and transportation, which allowed increased trade between nations. Combined with a merchant marine capable of transporting goods by sea, a world economy began to form. What exactly is a world economy? Well, a world economy, or global economy, is simply a description of the integration of trade in goods, services, and money worldwide. The spread of trade and investments abroad is linked with a process called imperialism. Between 1870 and 1900, European imperialism increased tremendously. Historians sometimes refer to this as New Imperialism, which basically meant that Europeans were making a mad dash for pieces of Asia and Africa. Why the sudden need for colonies? Well, colonization was basically the domination of Europeans over non-Europeans. A major factor that influenced colonization was competition between different countries. In a quest for greater wealth, countries such as Britain sought colonies in Africa and Asia that would provide ports and perhaps even offer material resources. So the possible economic benefit of having colonies was a big motivation. Many of the colonies could offer material resources such as oil, tin, gold, and diamonds. By taking these areas, European countries cut out the middleman. They did not need to trade because they now controlled the resources directly. Portugal, France, Britain, Belgium, Spain, and Germany had all set up colonies in Africa by 1914. In Asia, the British, Dutch, Russians, French, and Portuguese had taken pieces as well. In addition, since competition between countries was so fierce, sometimes one country would set up colonies in an area just to keep another country out. For instance, France would scramble to set up colonies in an area just to make sure Britain, Russia, or Germany would not have access. Once the colonization process started, all the major powers in Europe wanted a piece of the action. If a country was not taking part in the process, they were viewed as weak. Of course, everyone did not agree about the benefits of having colonies. In 1852, Benjamin Disraeli said, "These wretched colonies will all be independent in a few years, and are millstones around our necks." In fact, a common feeling was that colonies were entirely too much trouble to maintain, and that the people would eventually rebel for their independence. A well-known example of this was the Boer War in 1899. Opponents of imperialism were concerned about revolts, and these worries were realized when the Boer War broke out in 1899. Trouble began when the British took control of Cape Town, South Africa. Originally a Dutch colony, this area was controlled by the Boers, who were the descendants of Dutch colonists. The British and the Boers struggled for power from the beginning. However, tensions reached a boiling point when Britain forced Cecil Rhodes to resign as Prime Minister of the Cape Colony. He had other ideas, and attempted to overthrow the Boer government. The war lasted until 1902 and resulted in massive casualties on both sides. It is estimated that 22,000 British soldiers were killed during the war. Despite being victorious, the majority of British citizens were not happy with the death toll or the huge cost of the war. Of course, wealth was not the only motivation for establishing colonies. During this time, the prevailing attitude of many Europeans was that they were more advanced than people who lived in other areas of the world. Rather than trying to understand other cultures, they believed that they were barbarians or uncivilized. This way of thinking led to the attempt to change these cultures. And one way to do this was to introduce Christianity into these areas. Many Catholic and Protestant missionaries traveled to colonies in Asia and Africa and attempted to convert people to Christianity. To these people, it was their moral obligation to convert non-Europeans in order to save their souls. As we learned, during the late 19th century, Germany far surpassed all other European countries in industrial production. The new trade, industrial growth, and colonization all contributed to a global economy. The major players on the European scene were all competing for dominance. This led to a quest for material wealth and mineral resources. One way to achieve this was to acquire colonies, especially in Africa or Asia. To the nations of Europe, colonization was a way to gain access to trade ports, access material resources, Christianize areas, and stop other countries from progressing. During this time, Portugal, France, Britain, Belgium, Spain, and Germany had set up colonies in Africa. In Asia, the British, Dutch, Russians, French, and Portuguese had colonized areas. However, unforeseen problems occurred in these colonies. Conflicts such as the Boer War cost money and resulted in many casualties. Many people questioned this new imperialism. However, decolonization would not occur until well into the 20th century.